My mother didn't even wait for dessert. We were still seated at the long dining table, plates half full, the air thick with the smell of roasted meat and expensive candles she only lit when guests were around. My brother sat across from me, relaxed, confident, one arm draped over the back of his chair like he owned the room. Maybe he thought he did. My mother cleared her throat lightly. "So," she said, smiling too wide, "your brother finally closed on his penthouse downtown." A few approving murmurs followed. Someone whistled softly. Glasses clinked. She turned her head toward me. "And Natalie," she continued, voice sweet and sharp at the same time, "you're still renting, right?" A laugh escaped someone at the table. Then another. I felt the heat rise in my face, but I kept my expression neutral. I'd learned long ago that reacting only fed the performance. "Yes," I said simply. My mother tilted her head. "It's just funny," she added, waving her fork. "You're the older one. You always talked about being independent." More laughter. My brother smiled, that familiar smirk I'd grown up watching, the one he wore whenever the spotlight landed squarely on him. I took a slow sip of water, letting the coolness settle me. "My name is Natalie Brooks. I'm 28 years old, and at that dinner, my mother humiliated me for not owning a penthouse like my brother. If this resonates with you, share your thoughts. It means more than you know." My family had always loved comparisons. Grades, salaries, square footage. My brother's life was the yardstick, and mine was measured against it whether I asked for that or not. Growing up, he was the one praised for ambition. I was praised for being low maintenance. It sounded like a compliment until I realized it meant my needs were easier to ignore. The conversation at the table moved on, but the mood had shifted. I could feel eyes flick toward me, then away again. My mother had made her point. My brother leaned back, clearly enjoying himself. "Downtown living isn't for everyone," he said lightly. "Some people like simple." I met his gaze and smiled. "Some people do." A memory drifted in uninvited. Me at 16, standing in the kitchen while my parents talked excitedly about my brother's internship. When I mentioned my own plans, my mother had said, "That's nice, dear," and turned back to him. I pushed the thought away and focused on my plate. They didn't know. That was the thing. They thought they had the full picture because they'd never bothered to ask. Dinner dragged on. Wine flowed. Stories were told. My mother basked in attention. My brother accepted congratulations like he'd earned every inch of praise himself. At one point, my aunt leaned toward me and whispered, "Don't take it personally." I smiled politely. Always did. After the main course, my mother clinked her glass. "One more toast," she said. "To success." Everyone raised their glasses. I hesitated, then followed. "To my son," she continued, beaming. "For achieving what so few do at his age." The room erupted in applause. Something in me shifted, not sharply, not angrily. Quietly. Like a door closing. I remembered the first time I'd signed the paperwork. The smell of ink. The weight of the pen in my hand. How calm I'd felt, knowing something that belonged to me didn't require validation. I hadn't planned to say anything that night. I'd learned patience the hard way. Silence had protected me more times than speaking ever had. But as the applause died down, my brother raised his glass toward me. "Don't worry, Nat," he said with a grin. "You'll get there someday." The words landed softly, meant to sting. I set my glass down. "I already have," I said. The table grew quieter, not silent yet, but attentive. My mother frowned. "What does that mean?" I shrugged. "Nothing important." My brother laughed. "See? Always joking." I smiled again. I wasn't joking. That caught his attention. He straightened slightly. My mother waved her hand dismissively. "Let's not start anything," she said. "This is a celebration." I nodded. "Of course." Dessert was served. Plates clinked again. Conversations resumed, though I noticed my brother glance at me more than once, curiosity creeping in where confidence had been. I didn't rush. Timing mattered. As coffee was poured, my mother leaned over to my father and whispered something. He nodded, eyes flicking toward me briefly. I wondered if she was already crafting a follow-up remark. A joke. Another reminder of where she thought I stood. I remembered another dinner years earlier, when I'd quietly paid the bill without anyone noticing. When my brother had assumed my card was declined because I didn't make a show of it. I'd learned then that power didn't announce itself. My mother cleared her throat again. So Natalie, she said, have you thought about investing more seriously? Maybe you could learn a thing or two from your brother. The room waited. I looked around the table. At familiar faces. At expectations heavy and unspoken. At the version of me they thought they knew. I took a breath. There's something you should know, I said calmly. My brother chuckled. Oh. I met his eyes. You've been renting that penthouse, I said, from me. The silence fell fast. Glasses froze midair. Forks stopped moving. My mother's smile vanished as if someone had wiped it away. My brother's face drained of color. What? He whispered. I folded my hands on the table. I own the unit. I've owned it for years. No one laughed. My mother stared at me stunned. That's not funny. It's not a joke, I said. My brother's smile disappeared completely. And that was just the beginning. For a moment no one moved. The silence wasn't dramatic. It was stunned, like the air itself had forgotten how to carry sound. My brother stared at me, mouth slightly open as if he were waiting for someone to laugh and break the spell. No one did. My mother recovered first. She let out a small brittle laugh. Natalie, she said, shaking her head. Enough. This isn't funny. I held her gaze. I know. My father leaned forward, confusion etched deep into his face. What are you talking about? He asked. I reached into my bag slowly, deliberately, and pulled out my phone. I didn't unlock it yet. I didn't need to. The truth had already landed. The proof would come later. I bought the unit before it was finished, I said evenly. I never put my name on anything publicly. I didn't want attention. My brother's chair scraped loudly as he shifted. You're lying, he said, though his voice lacked conviction. That place cost $3.2 million, I finished. I know. My mother's hands trembled as she set her fork down. How could you afford that? I thought of the years I'd worked quietly. The bonuses I never mentioned. The investments I'd made while everyone assumed I was playing it safe. The nights I'd stayed in while my brother posted photos from places he hadn't paid for himself. I planned, I said. The word felt small, but it carried weight. My brother laughed again, sharper this time. So what? You're saying I've been paying rent to you? Yes, I replied. Through a management company. You never asked who owned the unit. You just assumed. The color drained from his face in stages. Confusion. Realization. Then something close to fear. My mother pushed her chair back. Why wouldn't you tell us? She demanded. Because you didn't ask, I said quietly. A memory surfaced unbidden. Me at 18, mentioning a scholarship I'd earned, only to have my mother interrupt to ask if my brother needed help with tuition paperwork. I'd learned then that announcements were optional. Results spoke louder. My father ran a hand through his hair. This doesn't make sense. It does, I said. You just never considered it. The table erupted then. Questions layered over accusations. My aunt muttered something under her breath. My uncle stared at his plate. My mother paced behind her chair, hands fluttering uselessly. My brother stood abruptly. This is humiliating, he snapped. You did this on purpose. I met his eyes. You humiliated me first. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The truth left no space for argument. My mother stopped pacing. You let us believe. I let you assume, I corrected. Her face tightened. Family doesn't hide things like this. Family doesn't mock each other either, I replied. The room fell quiet again, heavier this time. I remembered another dinner years ago. My brother bragging about a promotion he hadn't actually earned yet. My mother glowing with pride. Me sitting quietly, knowing I'd already surpassed that milestone, choosing not to say anything because it didn't feel worth the fight. I'd mistaken restraint for peace. My father finally spoke. So what happens now? I took a breath. This part mattered. The lease ends in 60 days, I said. It won't be renewed. My brother spun toward me. You can't do that. I can, I said calmly. And I am. My mother's voice broke. You'd evict your own brother? I'm not evicting anyone, I said. I'm ending a business arrangement. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me at all. You've changed. Yes, I said. I stopped shrinking. My brother laughed bitterly. So this was all a setup? No, I replied. This was the truth. You just weren't prepared for it. The rest of the dinner unraveled quickly. Dessert sat untouched. Conversations dissolved into murmurs. People avoided my eyes. My mother sat rigid, her image of me cracking under the weight of reality. When I stood to leave, no one stopped me. Outside, the night air was cool and sharp. I breathed deeply, letting it settle my nerves. Christmas lights twinkled faintly along the street, indifferent to family drama. I drove home slowly, replaying the scene in my head. Not with regret. With clarity. The next morning, my phone was full of messages. My mother's were long and emotional. My father's measured. My brother's furious. You embarrassed me. You blindsided us. This could have been handled privately. I read them all once. Then I replied to my brother. You laughed when I was embarrassed. This is just honesty catching up. I didn't respond to the others. Over the next few days, the story spread. Not accurately. Never accurately. Some said I'd tricked my brother. Others said I'd been hiding wealth out of spite. I didn't correct anyone. At work, I focused on what I could control. Meetings. Deadlines. Progress that didn't need applause. One evening, my mother called. Her voice was smaller now. Why didn't you tell me? Because you would have tried to manage it, I said gently. Like everything else. She was quiet for a long time. I didn't realize you felt that way. I know, I replied. That was the closest we'd come to understanding. As the 60 days ticked down, my brother scrambled. He complained to anyone who would listen. He posted less. His confidence cracked in subtle ways. I didn't enjoy it. I simply observed. One night, as I sat alone in my apartment, the city glowing outside my window, I realized something important. I hadn't revealed the truth to punish them. I'd revealed it because I was tired of pretending. And that was only part of the story. The aftermath arrived quietly, not with shouting but with space. Days passed where no one demanded explanations, and the city kept moving as if nothing remarkable had happened. I slept better, ate slower, walked longer. At night, traffic murmured below my windows, a steady sound that didn't ask anything from me. I thought about how power changes when it's unnamed, how silence can be chosen instead of endured. I remembered the look on my mother's face, the pause before understanding. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like alignment, finally. Something settled inside me, steady, awake, unafraid, and unmistakably mine. My brother moved out within weeks, anger trailing him like noise after a slammed door. I didn't watch him leave. I didn't need to. The building returned to itself, and the penthouse stopped being a stage. The management company handled the details, professional and clean. I learned later he blamed me publicly, told friends I betrayed him. That story traveled faster than truth usually does. I let it. People believe what protects their pride. I focused on work, structure, mornings that began without dread, evenings that ended without rehearsals. Peace arrived quietly, dependable, and surprisingly generous with time alone together. My parents called separately, cautiously, like guests knocking at unfamiliar doors. My father apologized in fragments, acknowledging assumptions without naming harm. My mother cried, then listened, then asked questions she should have asked years earlier. We didn't fix everything. We adjusted the volume. I learned boundaries don't require cruelty, only clarity. They learned admiration isn't ownership. When we met again, it was public, neutral, small. Coffee steamed between us. Sunlight fell across the table. We spoke carefully, honestly, and left without promises, which felt respectful, maybe even kind. Time did the rest, slow, patient, ordinary, and quietly corrective for us. At work, nothing changed except my posture. I stopped shrinking sentences, stopped adding disclaimers. Colleagues noticed. Opportunities followed. I accepted them without apology. Success didn't feel louder. It felt steadier. I remembered nights counting numbers alone, trusting spreadsheets more than praise. That discipline had built the thing my family mocked. I didn't announce wins. I placed them carefully, like stones forming a path. Each step reinforced the last. Confidence, I learned, isn't arrogance. It's the quiet decision to stand where you are, unmoved. Ownership begins inside, before contracts, before applause, before permission arrives and stays through storms without explanation. Now, the penthouse eventually sold again, quietly, to someone who asked fewer questions. I watched the listing disappear and felt relief, not loss. Property changes hands, dignity doesn't. I walked past the building once, sunlight glinting off glass, and felt no pull. What mattered had already moved. My brother sent one last message, bitter and brief. I didn't reply. Closure isn't a conversation, it's a decision. I chose to stop explaining myself to people committed to misunderstanding. The city kept breathing around me, indifferent and free. I learned restraint can be strength, not absence, when chosen deliberately over anger. Always today. Friends asked if it felt good to reveal the truth. I said it felt necessary. Justice isn't spectacle, it's balance. I didn't win a dinner argument. I reclaimed narrative weight. My mother stopped teasing. My father listened more. The table learned silence has consequences. When gatherings resumed, they felt different, softer. No laughter aimed like a blade. I noticed how relief settles when cruelty loses its audience. That night changed less than people think and more than they know. It ended permission I never granted. Respect arrived slowly, earned through consistency, not confrontation or volume over time alone. Afterward, quietly. I keep a small rule now. Say less, do more, leave receipts. It saves energy. It protects joy. When shame tried returning, I met it with facts and breath. I don't need rooms to fall silent again. I need mornings that begin cleanly. I need evenings without rehearsal. Sometimes I remember that laugh at dinner, the confidence it carried. It dissolves quickly. Power borrowed fades. Power built endures. I chose the latter, one patient step at a time without announcements. Consistency outlasts drama, and patience sharpens truth better than shouting. I walk lighter knowing this every single day now. Finally. If you've lived anything like this, tell your story, and don't forget to subscribe. Not for drama but for record. Stories teach us where we shrink and where we stand. Mine taught me timing matters more than volume. I didn't need applause. I needed accuracy. That night, truth arrived without theatrics and stayed. It still does. I carry it into meetings, dinners, silences. It steadies me. It reminds me that dignity isn't inherited, it's practiced. Quietly. Daily. On purpose. Each choice compounds, building freedom slowly, reliably, without permission. I trust that process now with calm certainty and steady breath always. Later, alone at home, I turned off lights one by one, listening to the city settle. No jokes followed me. No comparisons waited. I stood by the window and breathed, aware of how far I'd come without spectacle. I didn't disappear. I clarified. The table learned. So did I. Sometimes truth doesn't roar, it rearranges. Sometimes dignity doesn't argue, it stands. I closed the curtains, smiled once, and chose sleep, certain of myself and unburdened. Peace settled fully, complete, deserved, and lasting beyond the room. I rested, grounded, grateful, unashamed, steady, awake, whole, present, free. Sometimes truth saves you as quietly.